Welcome into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jayson Tatum.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sidelines.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Oh, baby, another edition of Gas is up and rolling and ready for you, America. Of course, you can watch us on X. You can watch us on the Insta. You can also get us on YouTube as well. I am Gresh. He is Jayson Tatum. My goodness gracious. That is a beautiful background. You look perfect today. The hair is on point. My goodness, Jayson Tatum. You are Ric Flairing it, looking as only you can look.
Oh, road game today. I'm glad you brought up the lettuce, Gresh, because my wife doesn't know, but we're growing the lettuce back out a little bit. My brother saw me on something over the weekend. He said the hair's kind of long, but if you don't know now, you know we're growing the lettuce back out. Hopefully it'll be down to shoulder length as we turn the page on 2025. But it's growing. My wife will be looking for me to cut it, but no, we're going back to the full mop.
What is the goal in doing so? Other than maybe potentially because you mentioned your wife. So it's one of two things. You're either growing it and are scared to death, or you're growing it to antagonize her a little bit, in which you would then be turned into scared to death when she finally snaps at what would be your mop.
I love that you asked the question in that manner. Like, what exactly am I doing? What I will say, sneaky low maintenance when you grow out the lettuce, right? We ain't getting that tight fade every 4 weeks, right? And I love seeing my guy Gianni, but we let it flow a little bit. And then maybe we'll get into the man bun stage, whatever it is. But however it falls, right? However it falls, you wear your collar up or you let it fall, whatever it may be. And juxtaposed to John shaving his head every few days or whatever, he was doing post-fight interviews over the weekend. I see a little scruff on the scalp. I'm sure he wanted even cleaner than it was.
Yeah, and he can't go back to hair Anik. He like what he had in the early stages when he was just like interviewing people. He can't go back to that. Now people have known him as the worldwide voice of the UFC as a bald. So there is no return from that.
Oh, he could let it flow, though. I mean, what, Nick Wright on Fox had the short haircut. He's letting it flow, and he looks much better with the flow. And I will say, for those that know me, that have been around me, yeah, I've get comments on the salt and pepper, but everyone likes the flow. So we're going to let it flow, see what happens. But my wife will probably have it trimmed up, before the summer. But we'll see, She ain't going to drag me there.
No, and the next time, you mentioned Nick Wright a couple of times. Next time you see him, tell him I said hello and let him tell you the story of how we were forced to do a crossover and I pinned him in a corner because he thought he was actually funny. But that's another story for another time. That's another story for another jackass in that goof. And he knows what I'm saying. And
I don't know him. I've never met him. You act like
I was just gonna say no. I mean, he's a fucking jack off. How's that? And I don't normally swear on here very much, and he knows I'd say it to him because I said it to his ear a bunch of years ago when we were forced to do one of those, Boston, Houston things or something like that. I got great friends down there that I made fun of, and he took the cheese as if it was serious, and it was like, get out of here, little boy. I think the line I used was, because we were near Thanksgiving, I think the line I used on him was, told his co-host, hey, why don't you tell your little friend to go sit in the corner, and when grandma's got the turkey ready, we'll cut it up for him and make sure he doesn't choke. So I'll leave it at that. And see you all. You're the one who finds the way to get me wound up inadvertently, and it actually tickles me. It's like throwing political stuff on Facebook nowadays. You just
I know you as this jolly man. I just the guy that gives zero fucks is
that is.
I like when he does.
I love you for that. We got our F-bombs out of the way early, and there were a lot of them. Well, there were some of them flowing to me as I was getting phone calls all last week, early in the morning from Albert Breer and the special teams coach of the Broncos, Darren Rizzi, who are still terrorizing me all week from the combine. But Jay, the combine came and passed, and this is one of the rare years as we dive into real content that in the combine, we didn't hear of wow, that guy ran a, 4.1940, or this guy jumped through the gym or something like that. I feel like with the combine, everybody kind of got what they needed out of it, but now we're on to free agency. And brother, you and I have talked free agency for a month, and it's crazy now that it is upon us. And a lot of the guys that we might have been really interested in or smarting on are not going to be a part of the process. T. Higgins, as you accurately predicted, is staying in Cincinnati. Matt Stafford is staying in L.A. So is Alaric Jackson. So because of that, is there any letdown for you going into free agency? Because the couple of sexier buys that were to be out there are not going to be there for the Patriots.
No, and I guess we will look at it through a Patriots lens, because that's the lens I'm looking through it, in which I'm looking through it. And I can't get enough. Even the inactivity is of interest to me. But I want to touch on T. Higgins, right? Because you say, oh, I accurately predicted that he's staying. Is he though?
Yeah.
Is he staying?
Yeah, with the franchise tag, because here's the thing. What the Bengals have now done is, if anybody wants him, you've set the floor for negotiations at $26.5 million. And I'm not saying that he's not worth that as a player, Jay, but I think that will force some teams to push away from the table, because you're not allowing them to control the process. Basically, T. Higgins has been given the chip to put at the center of the table and say, this is where we start negotiations. That's why I wonder if some just go, nah, it's too rich for my blood.
Well, and if it's 26 this year and then unrestricted at the end of next year, if he does remain a Cincinnati Bengal, it's just still hard for me to envision a scenario. What, you paying him 40 million or 35, and Jamar Chase is getting what, 45? It's hard for me to envision it making sense. And, I've brought up ad nauseum Andrew Whitworth, talking about them should have moved him last season.
Correct.
I mean, in terms of them moving him right now after tagging him, right? What do you think a team would have to give up? In addition to, ripping up whatever that 26 million is and giving him 5 years, 150 or whatever it may be.
I think for the Patriots, it would have to involve a first round pick swap, because there's no other way you can get the value. And the other issue would be if there's another team that really likes T. Higgins, and let's say, Jay, there's 17 through 32 in the draft order, they're okay giving up that first round pick. We at number 4 are not. So to me, the only thing that you could do with the first round pick to try to get in T. Higgins is to swap first rounders and then start to figure it out from there. And quite honestly, I'm going to take myself out of a chance to maybe get Travis Hunter, because I want to work a pick swap to try to get T. Higgins. I don't know. That just doesn't seem to fit. It feels like there are other people out there that we'll get to, like DeVante Adams, where maybe you can get him on a short term and kind of control the money a little bit more. But no T. Higgins is just really disappointing, because what it would have done, Jay, is truly smoked out how many teams either A, viewed him as a real number 1, or B, are desperate for a number 1, and what are they willing to do? Because those are the teams that the Patriots are going to have to compete against the next couple of years for any big name wide receiver that comes up, unless they go find themselves one this offseason.
Well, and some chirps about Brandon Aiyuk potentially being available. And, I can't get it out of my head where I think he pulled his pants down in the in camp last year with Kyle Shanahan. It's obviously before he got injured. And I believe it was before he signed that sort of contract. But I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco is trying to move on from him. There were certainly rumblings of maybe the Patriots being interested last offseason and Aiyuk not being interested in coming back to New England. So does that appeal to you at all, Brandon Aiyuk?
No, we went through this last year. And I did do a little digging on it. And it was, the dude who tweeted it out was like a guy with 183 followers and was like, hey, this could happen. And it was like, well, really? Now, I'm not saying that guy's going to be fighting someone at a Starbucks during the combine over scoops or anything like that, the way the rap sheet was. But I don't know. I feel like last year would have been the year to get Aiyuk. And now I think the Patriots can be at least a little more choosy in terms of moving forward. And, I know that we're going to be focused on the wide receivers, Jay, but Doesn't it kind of feel like the Patriots are really loading up to go get a bunch of veteran big guys to try to fix the interior right away? It sure doesn't feel like they're going for the sexiest picks on the board.
I agree. And even a guy like Chris Godwin, who I've started to become more interested in, do you think he's leaving Tampa? You know, I'm not so sure go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think he does end up leaving Tampa because it feels like Tampa's okay with him leaving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like they've left him open to get to this point. And I know that if you're Godwin, you're probably looking for just one more contract. But look, for the Patriots, I think they're really now, if we're going to be realistic about trying to get somebody that is a one or could profile as a number one receiver, Chris Godwin is probably the best thing in free agency. Because, you know, we like Steph Diggs and there are other guys that are out there, but even Godwin doesn't blow you away.
None of these guys are ones.
No, I mean, not really. You know, like Steph Diggs was a one in Buffalo for a period of time, but is he that anymore? Jay, the one that I see that is out there is DeVante Adams. I don't think he's baked. He's big as hell. 2 years and $70 million, but there's no guaranteed money. And if I'm being realistic about this, you probably get him for a 4th round pick. That's nothing to go get a player of that caliber. Now, I know there's a little bit of hand-holding that's got to go on, and I'm sure that maybe DeVante Adams would love to go play with Aaron Rodgers, and that's what I don't want to see happen in Pittsburgh, where the next thing we know, it's Aaron Rodgers and DeVante Adams walking through the door, and they become a bigger pain in the ass for the next couple of years. So I'm not out on DeVante Adams. I think the trade would be worth it. You know you're going to pay somebody anyway. So could you do worse than giving DeVante Adams, say, 2 years and $60 million with $25 million guaranteed to lure him here and play with a young guy and be the example in the wide receiver room, which, Jay, I desperately think a team like New England needs?
Well, I like all of that, but 4 words you said, to lure him here, that'll be the key piece. We'll get back to DeVante Adams, but Cody just put in the chat, if I'm not mistaken, the hits keep blowing for the Dallas Mavericks. The hits keep coming, should I say. Kyrie Irving, torn ACL, out for the season.
I didn't know if it was I didn't know if it was ACL or Achilles. He was helped off the floor last night. I know LeBron late last night tweeted about prayers up to Kyrie and all that. So yeah, it was something. If it was his ACL, it would not shock me. But yeah, it looks like Kyrie is out. And from every Boston fan, wah.
Yeah, well, and frankly, I know that we're going to talk about the NBA. I just maybe thought that was more breaking than it was. So we'll get back to that in the NBA. I still can't, because I want to talk about the Lakers and Luka, and so that'll transition nicely later on. But in terms of DeVante Adams, I just don't think he wants to come here. I think he wants to go to the West Coast. You know, Aaron Rodgers talking about the New York Giants or whatever it is. I don't see that being a very realistic possibility, but he would be at the top of my list for all the reasons you indicate.
Yeah, and I think with Rodgers, you know, I think the Giants are very live. I think Tennessee is alive in terms of getting Aaron Rodgers, but I just keep looking to Pittsburgh. And if you're Pittsburgh, how do you not go look at Aaron Rodgers? And look, if one of the benefits of getting him for anyone, I'm talking about Rodgers now, is that DeVante Adams wants to come along with, I mean, that, you know, that's one of those where you're like, okay, I know other teams have done this, but I'll find the money for 2 years to try to have those guys together. And if you're Pittsburgh, it's the most competent quarterback you would have had since Ben Roethlisberger. And some would say that just in playing the position, Rodgers is more competent than Roethlisberger. But that's the other thing that you and I have not really dug into. We're so focused on New England, right? And what they're going to do. How quickly can some of these other teams get good really quick? Like Pittsburgh can take a level jump with just adding those 2 guys.
Well, and in a league of parity, there are also teams that are going to take a jump down, right? We think the Patriots schedule looks soft. I actually sometimes prefer when the schedule looks hard because it ends up softening up and vice versa. So a lot can't be determined. But as a Patriots fan and as a fan of this league in general, I kind of enjoyed the fact, to your point about the combine, not much happened. More about maybe what doesn't happen, what people don't do there. But I like the rumors. I like the rumblings. I like everything that's sort of going on around it. And I think it may be a little bit of a slow churn, especially from a Patriots standpoint, because what I don't want them to do is just sit and be bottom feeders after all the elite is gone and sort of, the big highlight is Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, I would say, friend, that we're closer to what happened in 2021 when Belichick dove right into free agency right away and had a whole bunch of guys. Now, they might have been Rosenhaus guys, and it might have been easy to get it done. But nevertheless, if you work with an agent and they got a bunch of people, who cares how you end up getting the player and getting it done? Because, Jay, I just keep – every time I analyze this sort of Patriots group and thinking, where is it going moving forward, I'm convinced they're buying not one, they're buying 2 offensive linemen in free agency. They're going to get that group fixed quickly. And I'm convinced more than ever that they're going to overpay. We're probably not going to love the contract, but they're going to end up getting Ronnie Stanley, because the one place they have a massive hole on the roster that they really can't fix unless they go about it this way is to turn around and sign Stanley in free agency.
Give me all of it. And a couple of big guys, I'd be all for that. I don't know if John Harbaugh lets him go. I'm not sure if Ronnie Stanley wants to not play with Lamar Jackson, but I think New England's becoming more appealing every day. Belichick and that regime, and really a lot of smart regimes in the league, always want to get rid of a guy sort of too early, a year too early rather than a year too late.
Correct.
Not necessarily pay them for what they've done, pay them for what they're going to do. But you just saw Harold Landry on the screen, right? I think he's going to be 29, but a guy like that who knows Vrabel, who can come in and lead, I don't think it's heavy money. That's a guy that would be interesting for me.
Yeah, and I think he's a bit piece or a bit player, let's say, because I'm now not ruling out drafting Mason Graham number 4. I think when Mike Vrabel came out and sort of talked about getting things right, like I know for a fact, because I talked to the person that he was talking to, when Mike Vrabel first got here, he sat down and did an interview with someone that I know and trust and said, and the guy looked at him and said, yeah, Mike, it's kind of messed up here. And he goes, don't worry. He goes, I got my plan to get it right. And that meant on the field and off the field. And you get the off-field stuff right, the on-field stuff starts to come. And I just think more and more he's going to go big guy, big guy, big guy, and maybe not de-emphasize the wide receiver, but go get kind of a mid-level one, and then shore up the lines of scrimmage, and that includes the defense. And if there's one Cincinnati Bengal, Jay, that I think could be in play here because the Patriots are in spend mode, it might be Trey Hendrickson. So if you can go get Hendrickson and have him as a – think about this, okay? If you're going to move Devon Godshaw in theory, right? Say let him go explore, trade. Maybe you move him for a middle rounder, right? You have Keon White as one defensive end. You have Christian Barmore on the interior. You draft Mason Graham. And on the other side could be Trey Hendrickson or into rotate would be Harold Landry. Now you're talking about guys that can stay on the field all the time. And when you look at the Mike Vrabel defense, he likes 3-down defensive linemen. So I'm starting to now think more and more, maybe Mason Graham is a part of it. And when I lay it out that way, you get mobile, agile, and more importantly, hostile towards the quarterback very, very quickly.
You've thrown out so many hypotheticals over the last several weeks. It's going to be really interesting what sticks, right? We should almost do like a free agent predictor where we actually are predicting some of these things. I just like the idea that Mike Vrabel is involved in all of this. He's even made points about certain guys are going to go certain places. You're not going to have the opportunities to get everyone, right? A guy like Deebo Samuel can't become official now, but he's with Washington, right? That was a guy that I wasn't necessarily particularly interested in to come play in Josh McDaniels' offense. But he's certainly no hard feelings in San Francisco, but a nice piece for Jayden Daniels.
No, and look, it's a little excessy. However, you gave up a 5th-round pick, which is really nothing to go get the player. Now you got to manage the player and the emotions. And, that is, I think, another thing that we got to be mindful of is that are you bringing in someone who would be a turd in the punch bowl? Deebo can get a little bitchy sometimes. So is Jayden Daniels, good enough to kind of keep him sort of on track, committed, even in games where Terry McLaurin's going to tear it up for 10 for, 120 yards and maybe go get a touchdown. Kevin Scott, see Washington make some solid picks so we can go all the way next season. Here's the thing to remember about Washington, okay? Do you remember how the New England Patriots ended up with Gerard Mayo? It really was because of a shrewd trade that Bill Belichick made the year before, coming off where the 49ers, under, remember, Ty Ware and Mike Nolan had a little bit of success. They went to 9-7. So what did they do? Oh, we're close. Let's go all in. They went all in. They got the Patriots' first-round pick. They drafted a tackle. It did work out for them, but it also gave the Patriots the 49ers' first-round pick. They soiled themselves the next year after their big rise up, gave the Patriots the number 7 pick. They traded down to 10, got Mayo, got extra picks, because that was the Spygate year where they stole the Patriots number 32, but they got to keep the higher pick. So I only bring that up as reference, as we've seen a lot of teams kind of spike up, and then it's the natural backslide before they get going once again. That's all. I don't want to burst Kevin's bubble.
No, that's great. I hear reporters ask whether it's Elliot Wolf or someone else, hey, are you guys going to spend all the way to the cap? And the guy will say, oh, well, we're going to try or get close to. Can you address that? Go ahead.
Yeah, you're an idiot if you want to spend all the way to the cap, because first of all, you got to manage 17 games, right? There's a reason the practice squad is expanded, because you're going to need bodies up and down the roster all year long. You're going to shuffle people in and out, which means you might have to activate them. You might not. You might have to cut some people. Here's the way I kind of look at it, Jay, and this was a Belichick rule, really, was have about 9 to 10 million going into the season, because you're not then handcuffed in making a trade. You can then move people up and down the roster. And if you have somebody that comes out of the blue that you want to extend, you have a little bit of current day capital to get something done.
Great point. And that's one of the things I do think Bill Belichick did a great job as a general manager, as sort of capitalizing it. You can be sure he put some contracts on paper that were very favorable for the organization. I want to talk to you about a couple of these quarterbacks. We talked about Matthew Stafford. Unless I'm mistaken, they haven't released the terms, but I just want to talk a little bit about this, because you did say last week, you sort of think Aaron Rodgers, if you could pick for 1 year one of those two guys, you would take Aaron Rodgers over Matthew Stafford. You talked about Pittsburgh, but I think the Rams, we've talked a lot about, hey, if it wasn't snowing, maybe they were hosting the NFC Championship game. So what do you think about Stafford back to the Rams, Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers? I want to talk about the quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, in terms of Stafford, I'm a little surprised that he ended up going back there. I thought that somebody would have been like, no, we'll give you $50 million to come here and play. And then guess what? The genius out there would have flipped Stafford in a heartbeat to bring in Aaron Rodgers. So that's the crazy point. People think I'm nutty. That was the rumor, was that if Stafford left, they knew they could do, because who were they going to pivot to on the roster? They weren't going to bring back Jimmy G. They don't have anybody at backup that they were going to. It was more than likely going to be Aaron Rodgers, with the dream of maybe moving Cooper Kupp and also getting DeVante Adams in there. But Stafford stays around. It's a good fit. They should have kept him. They don't need to really upgrade at that position. To me, it's fix all the other stuff. But the more people that I talked to from the combine or text with Jay, the more I kept hearing from Stafford's probably not going anywhere, but if he does, Rodgers is sliding right into that spot. Would have been amazing.
It would have been, and I think that DeVante Adams probably would have come through, and I do think they'll find a way to move Cooper Kupp. I don't see him remaining on that roster, even if they're getting pennies on the dollar. Sam Darnold, the Vikings didn't tag him. I'm almost laughing, because you and I just find Sam Darnold to be like a reality show. He's 28 years old. Does he deserve to get his 25, 30 million from someone? You can be sure, but I would have I'd be covering my eyes if I'm any of these teams, because I would want nothing to do with him, unless you're telling me he's like $8 million backing up Drake May.
Brother, you nailed it. And if you franchise tagged Sam Darnold, you're then saying at minimum, because remember, it's the floor that would be on a negotiation if you tag a guy, $40.24 million, even for 1 year. You and I are sharing a brain, brother. I am not paying Sam Darnold that kind of money for one season. Now, you want to get into the whole long-term contract thing, maybe he can get a 2 or a 3-year deal where the number would come down significantly, but he would get a healthy chunk of guaranteed money. But I'm with you. I mean, if I'm running a team, I would have to be mega desperate to turn to Sam Darnold and then try to sell to my fans, oh, no, this is the path to prosperity in 2025. If you and I ain't buying it, fans at some outpost in an NFL city ain't buying it.
I agree. And like, let's say you're a fan of the Colts or Anthony Richardson. I know it's going to be, it's like, I'm bringing Aaron Rodgers into Indianapolis, right? With that running game, let Aaron Rodgers play on the turf a little bit.
I wouldn't rule it out. They want somebody to go in there and really challenge Anthony Richardson. It doesn't seem like the goof who's the GM there, Ballard, is really in love with Richardson now that he drafted him.
Yeah, well, it's just so interesting. And talking about a guy being ready or not, even to hear sort of Shedeur Sanders, different things about him, sort of, looking a little bit like Brady and knowing himself well and not necessarily trying to get out of the pocket and knowing that he is super, super accurate. He can get the job done. It's going to be really interesting. I always go back to Bo Nix, and because I actually think he's really going to make that Denver team good for a long time, and Sean Payton's going to keep that job for a long time. It's going to be fascinating to see but that quarterback position is always so interesting to me because, Sam Darnold, to me, if I'm a team like Tennessee, does that interest you or no? I'd be more. There isn't a single team I can think of that I'd be more interested in Sam Darnold than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I agree. And for as much as Rodgers is a dink, and you got to have the right kind of infrastructure to be able to deal with the guy. I'm sure Mike Tomlin would take on that challenge. I'm sure that if Stafford had left, Sean McVay would have taken on that challenge. For as much as I crank on the guy, he would have the ability to connect with Rodgers and give him stuff that would stimulate him. In terms of other teams, I mean, Rodgers clearly isn't a fit for the Jets. You poo-pooed the Giants very quickly on Aaron Rodgers. I'm a little surprised at that. Or did I misread the way you positioned the comment?
I really just want Aaron Rodgers to be a starter somewhere because I just watched his documentary, Enigma, which I thought was really interesting. And I think maybe I think a little bit more of him as a leader than I did 5 days ago. No, I wouldn't be opposed to him going to the New York Giants. I don't think the Giants are one quarterback away from hoisting a trophy. So I'd much rather see Aaron Rodgers go somewhere where I really believe they have a chance to win the whole thing.
Yeah, and as you look at the teams that need quarterbacks on the back end of the draft, unless you're, say, Tampa, where you're probably not unhappy with Baker Mayfield and what he's done, you're not just going to punt your guy to bring in Aaron Rodgers unless you really feel like you're at a championship level. And then there's the whole, what is Rodgers looking for? And who knows? The guy could end up walking away and retiring. But I think what you and I have landed on is as long as Aaron Rodgers is out there, then Sam Darnold's going to have some doors closed in his face until the Rodgers situation gets settled out. And then it will be, do we really want to give Sam Darnold a butt ton of money?
Yeah, and the Aaron Rodgers injury, we talked about a little bit last week, and even when you look at Kirk Cousins looking super shaky, see, I wanted to curse there, looking super shaky really all year for me. I know he had some other injury situations, but and even Jamal Hill, I know we're going to talk about the UFC later, but how long does it take to come back from an Achilles, especially at that age, right? I understand that Aaron Rodgers did everything to get on a fast track, but you talked about he very well could look much better September 2025 than he did September 2024. So for the Jets to just be out of that business, I don't think they'll ever regret that because I think they make the right decision with Aaron Glenn moving forward. But I think you and I both think Rodgers has something to prove and ain't going out like that.
Yeah, absolutely. A talented prick. Sign me up, because that's really what he is. And to your point, like he's got something now to kind of prove here that, he's closer to Tom Brady than he is these other guys that he ends up getting compared to, meaning Aaron Rodgers. The combine came and went, and some odds have shifted a little bit. We had this like little combine kerfluffle with Abdul Carter, a combine kerfluffle.
Kerfluffle.
Yeah, with Abdul Carter waking the day after Abdul Carter comes out in full throat and says, I'm the best player in the draft. I should be number one. Oh, by the way, I got a stress reaction in my foot that now people are like freaking out over. So Carter is now plus 190 when it comes to the number one pick. Cam Ward is minus 230. And look at that right there. even those numbers have kind of changed a little bit. So I looked at those last night at about 1 a.m. And now Ward's 250, Carter's 190, but Jay, I see Travis Hunter sitting there at plus 750. And the more I hear about, people like Abdul Carter, maybe somebody wants to come up and get a quarterback, I waffle, I go back and forth, but I keep looking at these odds. And the further Travis Hunter gets away from the top pick of the number one pick, it just excites me, because if this guy landed in New England, my God, our entertainment level would change automatically.
I feel as though I'm almost on the other side of it. When you're in that 4 slot in the Patriots, it's your own fault. You should be in the number 1 slot.
True.
Being in the 4 slot is kind of exciting too, because something happened with Abdul Carter, and it's like, a little shakeup, right? What is it? Where's the impact on the number 4 slot? And rather than thinking about Travis Hunter, I'm thinking about Abdul Carter at 4. I'm thinking about people having some cold feet on who really may be the best player in the draft, because we've talked about this over and over again. And look, Travis Hunter, give me it all day long. Receiver, cornerback, I don't even care what it is, whatever you want, as long as you're out there as much as possible. I would prefer him to Abdul Carter, but hey, maybe Abdul Carter gets out of the top 3.
I didn't even allow myself to think that, because my thought process, as we kind of talked about earlier, was that they're going to go the veteran route to make sure you have a bunch of defensive tackles or defensive linemen and pass rushers. But Abdul Carter is interesting. I know the Tennessee people really love Carter. Now, do they love him as the number 1 pick? Maybe that's a part of the reason why, if you're Tennessee, you try to smoke out the Giants. Hey, you might not end up getting your guy, so come up and go get Cam Ward number 1, and then it kind of fills in from there. But I'm trying not to allow myself. I really am not. And this is another interesting market too, Jay. The team to pick first, right? So right now it's the Titans who own the pick at minus 105, and then there are the Giants in there at minus 105. So I think everybody is starting to feel a little bit of a shakeup, but let's just try to workshop this quickly. If the Giants go up there, they're taking Ward. Do we agree? If they move up to number 1, the Giants will take Cam Ward, I think, which is why they would move up that high. I don't think they would jump up there to go take Travis Hunter.
I don't either. And I didn't expect to have this conversation. What are they, sitting 6th?
No, the Giants are 3rd. So right now,
I was thinking Jets.
No. It's Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants, and then the Patriots are sitting there at number 4.
Yeah, honestly, it's really hard for me to imagine the Giants trading up that. I mean, I would go out and play Tennessee minus 105 to stay in that slot. I'd be surprised if the Giants like Cam Ward enough to move up to number 1. So it's hard for me to envision that. But yeah, your point's well taken. I don't think they would move up other than to draft a quarterback.
And if you're going to lock in the Giants, do it now, because the value, and I know it might be a throwaway bet, but if the Giants get a veteran quarterback, they're probably not moving up. If they don't, which right now, I mean, it's really 2 guys that would move the needle for you. And if the Giants don't get either Rodgers or Darnold, now you're talking about them having to address it. And maybe if you're going to jump on the Giants, the value is here, because if we find out 2 weeks from now that the veteran free agents are gone and none of them are coming to the Giants, I would think the odds on that pick changes dramatically under the G-Men.
Just fascinating. I don't ingest enough college football, but Michael Penix Jr., Cam Ward. Who do you take?
Wow. My initial answer would be Bo Nix, and I know you didn't ask me that, but I probably would go like, I like Penix. I don't love him. Same with Ward. I like Ward. I don't love him. I don't view either guy as real top end franchise quarterbacks. Like when you said it to me, Jay, my reaction was, Penix is left-handed Ward. Like, they're both kind of the same. They're both sort of the same in my opinion. But these are the types of discussions that you and I are having that NFL teams are going to be having everywhere. Like if you're Brian Daboll, you're scouring earth to find who your next quarterback's going to be. And there might have to be a little talking to yourself into like a young guy like Ward.
And I will say, if I'm Mara, and I own the New York Giants, there's a huge part of me that wants to take the son of Deion Sanders, number 3 overall, and fill that place with excitement. I do think Shedeur Sanders can move the needle in a way Cam Ward maybe can't. Maybe I sound dumb. Maybe Cam Ward's definitely the better player, but I do believe in Shedeur maybe a little more than most. I think 6-7 weeks ago, it was pretty even between those two guys. And it was a little, now there's really no question. It seems, Cam Ward, a distinct favorite to be that number 1 player. He said, those teams that pass on me, you'll see it when I play you, but I don't know. What does he got up here?
Well,
Vegas
it's a Vegas to draft Shedeur, plus 2,000. That's very likely.
And Shiloh.
That is very and Shiloh. Oh, well then no, put the money back in your pocket. Shiloh Sanders is not draftable, plain and simple. He might, because his last name is Sanders and someone might take a chance on the bloodlines, but boy, the difference between Shedeur and Shiloh is it's like a silo of difference in terms of those two. But I'll tell you, Vegas ending up with Shedeur Sanders would not shock me, because Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. likes him some Shedeur Sanders. And if they don't end up with a real veteran there in Vegas, I could see it. Can I circle back to your Giants point real quick? If I'm John Mara, here's the thing that I would be thinking. I'm keeping my head coach and GM. They need a veteran, because do I want to set myself up like Chicago last year, right? Say the Giants end up with Cam Ward, and I got a coach and a GM that I don't love. And now I'm Chicago, where I have my young QB who was taught by a head coach that I fired after 10 weeks of the regular season, the way they did in Chicago with Eberflus. And then you're trying to reboot, and you're almost putting the pause button on the growth of a young quarterback. Felt bad for Caleb Williams because he was in that spot, because they didn't have people on the management level who thought, hey, maybe we should match these two up. So I wonder if old man Mara, Jay, is going to say, nope, you guys are going the veteran route, because if I'm going to reboot with a young quarterback and a new head coach and a new general manager all at the same time.
Well, it's really interesting, right? And like Shane, I like Dable a lot more than I like Shane, even though I guess Dable can, rub some people the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So and I think Dable for a young quarterback would really be great. So just looking at that in a vacuum, that makes a lot of sense to me if I'm John Mara. But when you look at the Chicago Bears, I don't think Caleb Williams is going to suffer that much, because I think it'll be only 1 year, and I think he's going to have sort of extreme stability right now, and that little bit of adversity I think actually could serve him. But you brought something up in the notes that I don't want us to pass over when we talk about running backs, because and even if we think about the New England Patriots and where they are at the running back position, but Ashton Jeanty, and forgive me if I didn't pronounce the name correctly.
No, you're saying it right.
You could pull up those odds, right? Apparently, there was another running back at the combine that maybe outdid him a little bit. North Carolina running back. I wish he was staying home with Chapel Bill, but Omarion Hampton apparently helped himself a lot. Who's bigger, right? Taller than Jeanty. So ran a 4.46 40, had a nice vertical jump. So, and you put up some numbers. Which team drafts Jeanty? Patriots were plus 215, I believe, at one point there.
That was for Hunter. For Ashton Jeanty, it's really interesting, Jay, because it's the Cowboys, the Raiders, and the Bears are kind of the top three. But the team on the list there, Cowboys are plus 260, Raiders are plus 320, Bears are plus 320, the Denver Broncos are plus 700. The reason I point that out is because they're the kind of team right now, Jay, where when you look at whether it's Hampton or Ashton Jeanty, those are two guys that come in and are plug and play players. You can get them up in protection, make sure they can handle the physicality of it. But really, both of those guys are plug and play dudes. And I'm now looking at the running back market. I look at it very simply. If I draft a guy in the first round, I'm going to get him 5 years because I got the control. Then I could franchise tag him for a year. And then that 6 years of running him down, send him off into the sweet good night. He served your team well. And it's somebody who can walk in and play right away. That's the appeal to those two running backs, Jay, to me, is that if you draft them, you're drafting people that you can put in your backfield in ink to be your starting running back if need be.
And we see when we see what Saquon did and Derrick Henry last year and a little bit of the resurgence of that position. I think it's very interesting where, running backs typically taken at the end of the first round, the opportunity to perhaps trade back into that first round. I think these guys may go, or I think Hampton really may go earlier in the 20s rather than sort of late. And I do think for a team like New England, and maybe New England's a bad example, but for some of these teams to be able to hit a home run with the back, seeing what Saquon can do, and guys that can sort of catch the ball as well as run between the tackles. I don't know. I think there could be some running backs that make big impacts moving forward. I mean, if I were to tell you Jeanty, Hampton, Ward, and Sanders, which one of these guys is most likely to be a Hall of Famer? Are these running backs really capable of being superstars, right? Who's a superstar in those four,
Yeah, I think it would be, I think if Ashton Jeanty goes to the right place, he could end up, being a 1,200-yard rusher this year and start building a career very quickly. Whereas with the quarterbacks, it might take a little bit. You and I both love Hunter and think that he's going to be a transcendent player. But in the way you asked the question, let me throw this at you. Think of this. What if we hear with the 29th pick in the NFL draft, the Buffalo Bills draft Amarian Hampton? When you think of the Bills, they haven't been able to fix running back, and that's a team you're exactly talking about where you get that kid in the end of the first round. Maybe you can take 4 weeks to integrate him, but boy, oh boy, you could tee him up for 13 weeks of your regular season, and that fixes a big problem for that team offensively.
Well, right, and Cody and I are aligned, right? $15 million a year for James Cook. That's what he wants, right? So that could be a position that get a little more value in the draft. Certainly, I can't wait. I've rarely been as excited for a draft free agency, especially as a Patriots fan. And I love the fact that I really don't care which way they go. I think I'll know how I feel about the directions in which they've gone, frankly, in September and October when I see if any of these things have hit.
Isn't it amazing what an adult in a leadership position can do for your mind as a fan? I mean, what a difference from Mayo to Vrabel. It almost feels like going back to Belichick in some way.
Well, and yes, and also too, with Belichick and Parcells, there's a volatility that I don't love, and I feel as though there's a stability with Vrabel. And a little bit more, you talk a little bit about his ability to relate to people in a little bit of a different way. I think Belichick under the radar, sneaky, very good with people. But I think Vrabel's sort of ability to encapsulate the whole thing and sort of run it all like a true business. Vrabel may be a better CEO than Belichick would have been. I just can't wait. Give me all of it.
How excited are you quickly that Chapel Bill is going to be this year's Hard Knocks?
Unbelievable. I mean, I can't curb my enthusiasm enough. Another program on HBO. Oh, give me all of it. Give me all of it.
I can't. And the NFL owners are now mad that franchise is going to follow Belichick into the pros versus following an NFL team. Everybody has been waiting for the Patriots to get on Hard Knocks, and they get Belichick out of the way. They bring in the country fried Rube who wants to make everybody smile. They don't do it there. You think Vrabel's going to let that ish happen in year one? Ain't no way. So we got to go to North Carolina now to get our fill.
That's a great point. And as a Patriots fan, I always loved, when Hard Knocks came about, it was always going to be a team that didn't finish with a good record. So the Patriots were really never, a threat to be on that program, but you knew Belichick would be like, no effing way, So I love the fact that if it came across Vrabel's desk, no shot.
Cody has just put up the breaking news, and I missed it this morning. Apparently now, according to CBS Sports, Belichick in North Carolina will not be featured on Hard Knocks now, after apparently the deal has fallen through. And I wonder if the NFL owners got in the way of this. This feels like, no, you can't go follow that guy of all people.
Yeah, and I was going to say maybe Belichick got in, but no, Belichick loves the camera, right? Bring it all in, at Bill Belichick.
Hey, I'd like you to meet Jordan. No, not Michael. The one who gets naked for me.
I mean, if I'm HBO, I do a spinoff just called Stevie B, Steve Belichick. You just cameras on Steve Belichick all day. I can watch Steve Belichick all day. It's like a train wreck.
He does. He looks like he's standing on the side of the road or whatever. So, man, I thought you and I were going to be able to have some fun with it. So how about we got excited and then poof, there goes. It went away. Honestly, if you're in the University of North Carolina, just go do your own. You don't need Hard Knocks. Yeah, just go do your. All you got to do is slam Belichick's face on there, and there you go. And Cody mentioned, you think Michael Jordan was out there doing NIL deals for car dealerships and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Imagine that. It's like, hey, an evening with Belichick and Jordan. Just sitting there talking about how great they are. They'd fill a building for that. That'd be the biggest NIL fundraiser going, for God's sakes. I know we got some Celts to get to. We've only got 15 minutes left in this edition of Gas. But however, there is big news. And the big news isn't just me doing national radio everywhere. It is the fact that the John Anik app has now dropped. Tell me about this.
Well, shout out Hanger 3, HANGR3, our guy Craig Conley, Niners Sports and Entertainment, a stage manager for the UFC, known John for a long time, connected us with these guys. They built it out at Hanger 3. Just having a little bit of fun with it. It's an opportunity for fans to get closer to John, putting out a lot of stuff out there that's not going to be on Instagram. You know, what we said, it's like, you know, everybody's sending everyone to a YouTube channel. You just download the John Anik app. You go there for everything. We're going to be doing some behind the scenes type footage, things like, you know, I sit behind him for these UFC fight nights, for these pay-per-views or whatever it is. But right, you know, in between fights, you can take off the headset, turn around, come to me on camera, give you some thoughts on the fight. That type of stuff will be on the John Anik app. And the main thing too, he has this library of fighter cards. I'm in his space right now, but you know, he has all these fighter cards that he wants to auction off and, you know, give away to fans. So you could sort of, fans can't get enough of this fighter card. So really it's a way to connect to John. It's a way to chat with John. You can have live Q&A. So we're excited about it. We'll see what happens. But in the world of content, right, it's just it's like a hurricane. So we're just trying to keep up.
Well, and for those who don't understand what the fighter cards are, right? So John's preparing his notes every week, a lot like the way Jim Nantz and Tony Romo would for, so right. So those are the individual cards that like John is writing out and stuff. But in the world of football, you would see a guy holding what looks like a Cheesecake Factory menu or a Waffle House menu, and it's got the players written on it. So the way broadcasters organize information is interesting unto itself because everybody does it differently, let alone if, you know, you get somebody, here's the fighter card, and then the next thing you know, it's signed by somebody. And now you've got something that's really worth auctioning off, and it's a unique sort of piece of memorabilia for those who love John and the work that he does, and how can you not, but also love UFC.
Oh, and when you talk about the broadcasting and how each individual broadcaster, their system, it really is interesting because John's been doing this old school with paper and pen forever. And very recently, he said to me sort of every 6 months, like, oh, I got to digitize. And every time he says it, I'm like, no, you don't. Keep doing your thing. And I've had some opportunities to do my own broadcasting work. And you can be sure I have implemented his old school system, even whether it was 2022 or whenever I started, when I was calling live events. Give me all of it. The flashcard system works. I'm sure you have systems, and some of them I'm sure are old school from before you had a cell phone.
Bro, they're all old school. Like I could go, there's a computer program that they now make for people who do football games that you can just, it plug and plays. And, you know, my buddy Bob Sosi for the Patriots ends up using it. And it took him a minute to kind of get used to hey, you pay for this program. And then the next thing you know, they end up having this printout for you and all the information's there. But what have I learned during the week?
Bingo.
I write it down because it's the easiest way to have it come off the top of your head when you need it.
No question about it. And that's how you commit it to memory. There have been times where I've sort of filled in and written out the fighter cards for him. It benefits me. But, you know, it's always chasing whatever it is. And you can be sure there's sections on the fighter card left open for when he sits in the fighter meetings and talks to the fighters and gets that little nugget, whatever it is, you know, to sort of carry through to the broadcast. But I can't get enough of it. But it'll be fun on the app, no question about it. So we're looking forward to seeing what we can do behind the scenes. You know, and maybe, you know, even if we're partying after a pay-per-view, right? Go to the app, maybe you'll party with us for a little bit.
That'd be amazing. I am hosting a UFC 313 preview on ESPN Radio on Saturday. So They haven't rolled this out just yet or made like the official announcement or whatever, but it's going to be me and somebody from Fight Pass, and I'm getting all the details today. However, ESPN Radio has said, we understand the value of UFC. We understand the value of a lot of other things. We're going to do some specialty shows. And I said to the guy who took over weekends, I was like, listen, I love UFC. You know, I'm not breaking down kick for kick. I said, but I can sit here and talk UFC all day long. And he was like, well, great. You'll end up hosting the preview show that we're doing for UFC 313. So from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN Radio, I'll be doing the preview show. So we'll be reacting to some of the fights live as they're going on while we're doing this preview to get ready for the main card. Love it. And thank you, because when they said, oh yeah, you do some of those Anik boys, and they're like, yeah, and they're like, oh, you know, UFC, and then that's how it kind of opened the door and sort of went from there.
I love it. Give me all of it. Can't wait. It'll be interesting. It'll be a lot of fun that the fights are actually going on. That'll benefit you. Main event. Cody just dropped it on the screen. Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev. I can't wait. You know, this is going to be an interesting fight card. I'm excited. I leave tomorrow. So Ankalaev is really the guy that a lot of people think is the most difficult matchup for Pereira. It's close on paper. I think Pereira is a slight favorite. Ankalaev's good everywhere. Everyone talks about him wrestling. Not necessarily can do sort of everything. Any action for you thus far, or your boys? I know your boys like to guide your action.
We're all over Pereira in winning this in parlays and on a straight bet. And Ankalaev, like you said, here's the thing about Alex Pereira, right? Well, you know, if you get him down on the ground, or he's not a great wrestler, okay, well, who's got him down on the ground? Very few people have. His wrestling and his defense, I think, is better than people give him credit for. You know, with Pereira, he's so long, the kicks can come from everywhere. But look, Ankalaev has been waiting for this moment for a while, and it's not he worked his way up, and yeah, they give him the typical title shot where maybe he proves he's not at a championship level. That's not this guy. This guy, Ankalaev, is a real battle. I just, though, Jay, have so much respect for the people Alex Pereira has fought, the times that he stood up for UFC and said, yo, you need a main event? I'll beat somebody's ass. And he's turned around and done it. And I think Ankalaev is going to be a tremendous challenge, but I don't see Alex losing. And maybe I'm brainwashed because I believe what I've seen from him in really the last 5 fights. Ankalaev is good, but I don't know. He might be missing just this much, Jay, in terms of beating a guy who is going to be a Hall of Famer someday in Pereira.
I agree with almost all of that. I would probably use a better superlative than good for Ankalaev, but I agree with you. So Ankalaev hasn't lost the fight since his UFC debut in 2018. He was defeated by Paul Craig, so undefeated in his last 13. And I love this guy. I've been talking about this guy for years. Rogan's been all over Ankalaev for years. But what I will tell you is as I built this guy up and I said, oh, that's the guy to beat Poatan. That's the guy to beat Poatan. Well, Poatan has just been continuing to defend the title, get better, continue to round himself out as a mixed martial artist. So now that it's here, I don't like Ankalaev as much as I did a year ago, 18 months ago, whatever it may be. So for me to look at Poatan minus 115, minus 118, or whatever it was right before we came on, hard for me to look anywhere past that. I'm looking forward to this matchup, though, far more than I've looked forward to any other Poatan matchup in a long time. I was looking forward to Jamal Hill, but that's because I love me some Jamal Hill, consider him a friend. But I'm fascinated by this. John always says nothing gives him greater pleasure than to see a guy realize a championship for the first time. So there's a part of me that will be rooting for Ankalaev, but my brother's going to be wearing his Poatan tracksuit this week. So, yeah, we're Team Poatan. You see the statue right over my shoulder right there. You see that?
Oh, yeah, I do, yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. And this fight card this card top to bottom is not Miami. You know, the next pay-per-view that's in Miami is loaded from top to bottom. There's really good fights in here, like Jalen Turner against Ignacio Bahamondes. That's a really good fight. You know, Lemos Lucindo, that's a good fight. But this isn't the stacked card from top to bottom that UFC rolls out once in a while. They're very much heavy on this Pereira-Ankalaev fight coming through in a big way. Co-main event, I'm tepid. I admit I'm tepid. And it's because of Justin Gaethje. There's just like, I get it. He's scrappy. He's fun. Mighty Mouse, whatever. Fine. I don't know. I just think the act is played with Gaethje at this point. Fiziev is now up to minus 162. I looked at it last night. It was minus 145. So clearly a little bit of money coming on Fiziev, but I don't know. I think for me, I'm pro Rafael in part because I just don't believe in Gaethje anymore, and maybe I'm the guy slipping on the banana peel.
Well, Gaethje was supposed to face Dan Hooker. Oh, another guy over my shoulder, by the way. This one. These guys fought 2 years ago, right? Majority decision for Fiziev. To know where Gaethje's at after that knockout just under a year ago at UFC 300, against Holloway. It's hard to know. I mean, hard to really know where he's at. Seeing that number grow is plus 120, whatever. Now plus 136. Hard for me not to want to peek at it. I think Gaethje will have the better gas tank. I don't know where Gaethje's at right now. From a gambling standpoint, I don't love the co-main event because I consider Gaethje a friend. I'll be rooting hard for Gaethje. But I think for Fiziev, kudos to him for being ready to take it, right? Who knows if the opportunity could have been presented to my guy Renato Moicano, but maybe not ready in a way that Fiziev was. But a fight that I do think maybe has more appeal from a gambling standpoint is the fight you mentioned, Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Jalen Turner. I believe Jalen Turner's ranked 13th. I didn't look at this, but Bilal Muhammad, training partner of Ignacio Bahamondes, welterweight champion Bilal Muhammad. Bilal has called Ignacio Bahamondes the best striker in the UFC. He's not saying that bullshitting about his teammate. He genuinely believes that, right? He's been facing him all day, every day in sparring. I think it's a fascinating opportunity for Bahamondes. He will arrive if he beats Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner, I don't think has competed since fighting at UFC 300 against Moicano when he had a great chance to win it and didn't. So do you have any leans in this fight? You think you'll be betting this fight?
Yeah, I do. And we're on by the Bahamondes end of things, and not just because of Bilal in the corner. This is a guy who's on the rise, in my opinion, like you said, with Bahamondes. Now, look, this is the big moment, right? You're getting a top 15 fighter. Turner's 13th in the rankings, so you're fighting a guy that is at least viewed as a step up. But no, I'm with you. In fact, one of the parlays I like is Pereira and Bahamondes, because you're getting those numbers are pretty skinny. You put them together, you got some pretty decent value there, I think. I'm with you. I'm very iffy on betting the co-main event. I would go for Fiziev if I end up putting something in there. But, you go Bahamondes and Pereira. Yeah, you're now looking at plus 226. Pretty decent value on two of the better guys on the card. Now, you're rolling the dice more with Bahamondes than you are Politan, in my opinion. But it's very much a worthy dice roll because I'm with you. I just don't know where Justin Gaethje is at this point. And I just can't touch that fight. But I feel like Bahamondes is a guy on the rise. This is his opportunity. Really a fork in the road, I would say, for Ignacio at this point in his career. You beat Turner, you're on your way. If not, then it's, okay, how do I restart again? And that might be a tough question to answer if he is on the losing end.
Well, we call Ignacio Bahamondes Nacho. His nickname is La Jaula, which I think the translation is the cage. There's a long story behind that, but we call him Nacho. I think that's because Bilal don't love pronouncing Ignacio. But Vegas likes Ignacio more than they like Poatan. It's like, in what world do I not bet on Poatan minus 115? But what I will say is everybody couldn't believe that Alex Volkanovski, when he faced Topuria, I believe, pick him. I get Volk minus 115. Be careful what you wish for. But I don't bet MMA very often. Hard Rock Bet doesn't allow me to bet at all.
No, they don't, bastards.
So, but I think it's going to be an interesting card. I'm excited to get back to a pay-per-view. Last one was in Sydney, Australia. I don't think John was going to fork out the 5-10 G's it would have cost to get me over there. So I'm excited, man. We didn't get to any NBA today, but let me just go there before we leave real quick, right?
I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
So the Lakers, man, right? And we talk about Kyrie Irving out now. I can't imagine being a Mavericks fan, but the Lakers, okay? I think they're number 2 in the West. Still plus 650 to win the West today. I think I played it plus 850 a couple weeks back. I mean, there's a great chance we get Lakers Celtics here, bro. I played Lakers over Celtics 50-1. Lakers over Cavs 50-1. I feel like this purple and gold nightmare may be coming our way, bro.
I'm glad you feel that way because after seeing Luka at a big time level in the finals last year, he's not tough. He turns it down, in my opinion. Now, I know you got LeBron, But Cody, if you can go back to those for a moment, those exact matchups, the reason why is because in there is Boston to beat Golden State at plus 2,200. Bro, if there's a team on the West I'm smarting on, it's the Golden State Warriors. They've gone from 9th to 6th. They're on a hell of a winning streak here, 8-2 in their last 10 ever since getting Jimmy Butler. And I've seen the Lakers get a little bit better, but I know that in a big spot, Luka's going to turn it down. I feel like the most dangerous team in the West might be Golden State. And if they can avoid the Thunder until the conference championship round, I think there is tremendous value in Golden State if you're going to jump on a team in the West.
Fascinating. And what a nightmare for me as a Celtics fan. If they're to make it to the finals and Golden State is the opponent, that I have to deal with Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. No, thank you. Wake me when it's over. And I hope that it's Celtics to beat Warriors rather than the other way around. I see a little bit of value on the Warriors ultimately. Yeah, I mean, LeBron or Steph Curry, either one of those guys has a good chance to get through. But when you sort of ask some of the sharper handicappers out there, they could probably talk to us a lot about OKC on the defensive side, even about the Denver Nuggets, who did win a championship not that long ago.
Here's what's scary about Oklahoma City is when you look at, and Jay, I'm a believer in this, and I know we're headed to a tiny bit of gas overtime here, but
gas OT.
But I look at road records, and I'm looking in the West right now, and I see Oklahoma City is on the plus side. The Lakers are barely on the plus side. Denver's 19-13 on the road. Here's Golden State at 16-15 on the road, and they started out awfully. I think on the road they might have started 2-10 or something like that, Golden State. So not only are they starting to win, they're winning on the road. You look at the Celtics. They haven't been great at home, but what are they? Arguably the best road team in basketball. That goes a long way to winning a championship. And I'll be very curious to see what Golden State does away from home the rest of the way here. That, to me, is going to tell me that they're really peaking and being ready for the postseason.
And I got to just say one thing before you get us out of here. Our show is gas, the gas tank of Steph Curry. What Jimmy Butler, we've talked about this before, Jimmy Butler getting to the line, giving him a 60-second blow or whatever it is. But overall, the cumulative effect of Jimmy Butler just taking the edge off of Curry, having to fill it up night in, night out. Klay Thompson ain't there anymore to fill it up. So I just think it is a perfect acquisition for Steph Curry at this stage of his career if he's going to have a shot to get one more.
Yeah, and when you look at, Curry ended up having, 56 earlier this week or something like that. You got Screaming A out there talking about how Butler can have a Klay Thompson-like effect on the Golden State Warriors. But here's the other thing about Jimmy Butler, and bro, you and I know this, which is why we can't stand that guy. That SOB's a dog, and he doesn't quit, and he wants the smoke. That's the thing that scares me most about Jimmy Butler. You look at Luka, he don't want no smoke. Jimmy Butler is like, oh, you're the best player on this team? I'm taking him. That's Kobe and LeBron like.
Exactly. And anything that was going on in Miami, Jimmy Butler is like the complete opposite of whoever that was reacting to whatever was going on down there. And I think you can't state enough what it's like that Golden State, the way they do business is so smart. They already locked him up to a deal that he loves. What's he getting? About $60 million a year for 2 years. And these guys are all about the average annual value, right? Yep. Ask Alex Bregman what he cares about. That's all they care about, right? Doesn't matter, state tax, whatever. They want that average annual value. So anyway, we go on for days. Yesterday, Jayson Tatum turned 27. Dude's accomplished a few things,
which is amazing. And just quickly on that, because I knew you were going to bring up Tatum and his birthday, right? I was doing a little digging on how much experience is really going to matter in the postseason. But I don't know if you've ever gone to Basketball Reference, and if you keep scrolling down on Baseball Reference and Basketball Reference, they normally have the players that like you're compared to, sort of like of your era, right? It's they do a whole like player comparable deal, and they very much do it for baseball. And if you look at some of the similarity scores, the names don't even match what Jayson Tatum has done. You look at the numbers, and there are very few people that you can compare Jayson Tatum to, and one of those names is LeBron James. End of story. He is at that level. And Jay, if they win another one, now we're talking about Jayson Tatum, the perennial MVP favorite for the next 5 years, because he'll have had 2 championship rings in the hand to stamp.
Well, and I feel as though there were a couple of seasons where they had a great chance. I think he should have multiple rings already. It's going to be super difficult to win that second. I will say this year, in my opinion, is playing out perfectly if they are going to hoist a second trophy in a row. The adversity, right? Not necessarily the front runner. I think a little jabs. I think things being a little bit funky. I think it has to be different, right? You heard A.J. Brown in the NFL talked about the Eagles. Oh, it's got to be totally different next year. In order to sort of get back there, I think things have to sort of change and be different in the universe. And I think they will be. I think health will be paramount. But I think Joe Mazzulla is the perfect man if they're going to have any chance to go back-to-back.
The old Bilton Hoodstein, when he was in New England, even when they were winning championships, one of the very first things he would say at the very first press conference of the very next year was, it's a new year. Every year, it didn't matter. There was carryover, but in Bill's mind, there wasn't. And I think, Jay, that's an excellent point that you bring up of the whole, it's got to be a little different. It's not the, dirt farmer dangling the carrot in front of the donkey, as Seinfeld would say, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close in terms of keeping these guys motivated. And look, right now, it's Cleveland, it's Boston, and there isn't anybody else that scares you. The Knicks have 40 wins. Bring them on. They don't match up well against the Celtics at all.
Objectively, I agree. But because it's New York and because it's the Knicks, it's sort of a cover eye situation. If there's one team that when I really don't like the Miami Heat, and when the Miami Heat have beaten the Celtics in certain spots in the postseason, it's really bothered me. Knicks fall into that category as well. It's not going to be difficult for me to go to sleep if Cleveland beats Boston. Don't get me wrong. I want Boston to win. Far easier for me to sleep if Cleveland represents the East in the finals than New York. So
I would agree. Anybody below the Celtics in the standings that makes the NBA finals out of the East, it's shame on Cleveland and Boston.
And I tell you what, the Indiana Pacers, I think, are going to be heard from to some extent. Halliburton is really dangerous. I kind of like that team in the postseason. They've been a lot better as the season's gone on. So I think the Celtics had a funky postseason last year. There were some teams that were banged up, and I think they had a nice path, even though they went 16-3. So anyway,
and they're ready for the tougher path, I believe, as well. So we got some UFC 313 this weekend. Jay will be a part of the coverage on the UFC Fight Pass. I'll be on it on ESPN Radio. They're doing a special pay-per-view show for the first time, I want to say, maybe since like UFC 300. They haven't done.
I love it.
Anything
with the real Gresh at the helm.
Yeah, how about that? Well, nobody else was available, so I can sit here in my underwear at home and and not have to worry about it very much. And look, we'll see what happens in free agency next week. I'm sure we will be full of rumors, and the tampering next week, Jay, will have begun. So we'll have heard instead of Albert Breer sending me a text at 2 a.m, he'll be putting it out on Twitter, some of the stuff that he's been, whispering our way that we've been able to take advantage of. So your wheels up tomorrow, is that right?
Wheels up tomorrow, Las Vegas, Nevada, my home away from home. Can't wait.
I love it, brother. We're going in May, unfortunately, for not the fights, but I'm with you. I would like to move out there very quickly at some point. I want to be an old. I want those. I want the flip-flops out there so I get the tan lines on my feet from just roaming around.
We know you're on 11 networks a week. So if you talk to any sharps, college basketball guys, whatever it is, don't be afraid to push out a tweet or two, throwing us one of these funky plays in the Ivy League or something up north.
I get you a hot Ivy League pick. You go into Circa betting $500 on Brown. They're gonna look at you and be like, "What is wrong with you?"
You're laughing. That's like exactly what I'm looking for.
I know. I will go on the hunt, friend. Great job by our guy Cody Merrow today. Hey, by the way, you can see us and at the Real Gresh and at Boston Anik. That's where you get everybody at Cody_Merrow on Twitter. Make sure you follow our guy Code. Make sure you're subscribing to the Gresh and Anik Show Gas. You can get us at The Real Gresh on YouTube. Who knows? Maybe someday soon we'll be coming to John Anik app or something like that. The replay might end up airing on there. Jay, have a great week. Have fun in Vegas, brother. And we'll see everybody here next Tuesday for another edition of Gas.